Hey y'all, it's Steve, Hobo with Wood Chips. Today we're going to be looking at MillMage. This will be the first video we're doing on MillMage, and it'll be setting up for your first project in MillMage. Stay tuned. So we're starting a new chapter in the Hobo with Wood chronology, the Hobo with Wood timeline. We've been playing with lasers and now we're moving into CNCs. Finally, we have a working version of MillMage. And I'm going to be starting my adventure with a little CNC, the Cubico. And I've got a larger CNC and I've tried playing with a few of the other softwares that are out there, but I found them to be a little intimidating and expensive. Some of them really expensive. In order to do the things that I want to do, they were terribly expensive. So I ended up mothballing my large CNC because it was just too expensive to learn. I was tearing up more and losing lots of valuable equipment, bits, raw material. It wasn't cost effective to even try to begin to learn that machine. So when the Cubico came out, light bulb moment, I said this is a perfect opportunity to learn a new software and a new technology on a much smaller scale. And some of you have already seen this on the Hobo with Wood site, but I was making plaques for laser engraving, and I had some pieces that were irregular shapes, had knots and stuff in them. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to sell those. So those are going to be perfect for CNC use. So I took a blank like this that I had already routed the edges on and had a nice material. This is Argentine Osage orange, and routed out a coin tray. And this turned out really super nice. I was able to get all 50 stars in there. Those are less than a millimeter a piece. Really fine detail, and the Cubico was able to generate some really high quality work. But it's small, and that's okay. That's what I'm looking for. Something that's going to be really inexpensive, and if I wasted this, so be it. It was already what I was considering to be unsellable or irregular pieces anyway, but I've turned it into a beautiful piece of work. So that's why we went with the Cubico. And now I wanted to use MillMage because I had already wrapped my mind around LightBurn. I had fully embraced it and began to really understand how it works, and got fairly creative within the software. Is MillMage a replacement for the Vectric or VCarve or all those others that are out there? No, it's not. Will it be eventually, someday? Possibly. I don't even know if that's their end goal, to be in that caliber. I don't know. But it's a perfect tool for someone who is in the laser engraving world now and has a really good firm grip on how LightBurn works, to make this natural progression from lasers to CNCs. So that's what we're going to look at. And this first video, we're going to talk about what is required to actually just do a physical setup. We're not going to go into the mechanics of the CNC. This video is strictly going to be about setting up your material in MillMage for your CNC. How simple it is, what's involved, and what you have to know and think about. So let's switch over and get a quick glance at MillMage. And I need to get that pulled up and swap it over. And when you look at this, in fact, I'm going to show you LightBurn. I've got a job on the laser running now. So there's my LightBurn. Got the job running. and this is MillMage. They sure do look an awful lot alike. That's because they're practically identical. Except one's controlling a laser mod, the other one's controlling a spindle. You are working in a 3D world with MillMage, so instead of just laying a piece of material down here and sending the laser out just to cut out a hole, you're going to be using the spindle to move on the X and Y axis, but also you have Z controls where it's going to control the plunge depth into your material. So I've made a little list of what all is involved when you're using a CNC and using MillMage. And pardon me while I refer to this list, and you're going to learn that when you're doing CNC work, list, checklist, it's going to be your best friend in the world. Make a list and check it twice. And fortunately, in LightBurn and in MillMage, you actually have the ability to create a checklist before you send the job out. It's built in to LightBurn and MillMage. So some key points to start with. Project setup. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. You always define your material size. The thickness, the height, your origin points, both the X and Y and the Z origin. You've got two origins when you're doing CNCs. This sets the stage for everything else. You have to do your project setup first. Then you have tool selection. Tool selection is what bits are you going to be using. Are you needing to do some VCarving? Are you doing some roughing out? You need to just remove a whole bunch of material. Are you doing a ball nose end mill? There's all kinds of information you've got to learn about tools. And there is a lot of information about the tools. Not just the various types, but also their feed and speed rates. And depending on what your materials are and the strength of your machine, all these things are going to come into play. And fortunately, when you buy quality end mills, they can give you some suggested feed and speeds for those end mills. But just like with the laser, you're going to need to use those as kind of a launching point to figure out what speed and feeds are going to work best for you with your materials and your spindle or your router. Then you got your operations. Your operations are what you tell the spindle to do with the tools that you've selected. Are you going to do a pocket? Are you going to do an inlay? Are you going to do a reverse inlay? What do you have to give it operations, commands on what to do with that end mill, that tool that you've put into your spindle. Once you've created your image and you've selected your tools and you've created your operations, then you're going to do a preview before cutting. It's highly recommended you look at a preview. And with the CAD and CAM that's available within MillMage, you're able to see a visual representation of what your operations are going to create with your material. Extremely crucial that you look at that before you start a job to make sure you're even getting close to what you are hoping to create. And then lastly, and this goes to the point of using the Cubico, start small. Don't try to take on a 36-inch wall art for your first piece of work. That's what I did, and I made the mistake of doing that because I'm now getting huge pieces of material, wasting them left and right, going through a huge learning curve, costing tons of money, wasting lots of time. So start small. And in a nutshell, essentially, MillMage turns designs into actions for the CNC, but you control the settings. Understanding the workflow on what processes you need to do is the foundation for everything else. If you put B in front of A, then it's not going to give you the results you need. A list, checklist, steps, priorities, and making that step-by-step first-time user guide is crucial. And like I said, we can do checklist in MillMage. But first, before we go into that, let's look at what you actually have to do just to set up your design. Set up the actual workpiece. So if we go back over to MillMage, and actually when you first open MillMage, it's going to open with prompting you with your machine setup. Now this is the beginner setup. This is, if you first open it up, you have an option to use an advanced setup. We're going to walk you through the beginner setup right now the first time. So it opens it up, it's prompting you. Select your machine. Well, I've got one machine right now hooked up, it's the Cubico. So next. Unit of measure. Do you want to use millimeters or inches? You can pick which one you want to use. Say next. Now you're going to put in your material dimensions. This is the physical dimensions of the actual piece of wood that you're going to be working with. So if your material is 120 by 100 and it's 20 millimeters thick, that's what you're going to put in here. You're not going to put in your actual work area of your CNC. You're going to put in the physical dimensions of your material. So X, Y, and then the actual thickness of the material. So here I'm using 150 and 100 and a 20-inch thick or 20 millimeter thick piece of material. Then you need to establish your 0 point for the Z-axis. Now, the 0 point for your Z-axis, what is that? Your Z-axis is how your router moves up and down. That's the Z-axis. And the 0 point is where do you want the CNC to recognize 0 as being? Do you want it to be at the bottom, at the base of the material, or 0 point at the top of the material? People work different ways with their designs and how they process these controls. For me personally, I like top. I want my 0 point for my Z-axis to be on the top. That way, when I'm telling it the operations start at 0 and I want it to move 1 millimeter, I know I'm starting at the top of my material and moving down 1 millimeter or down 2 millimeters. And I can always know that 0 is the top surface of the material. That's personal preference. Because if you look here, you can tell 0 point to be top or bottom. Some folks prefer to have the 0 point being at the very bottom. I'm going with top. Say next. Now, identify the project origin, the desired project starting point, typically either from the bottom left corner of the outer bounds or of the design, or at the center of the artwork. So 0 point can be bottom left, over here, bottom right, center, top left, or top right. Again, this is more of a personal preference on what you want to work with, how you see in your mind's eye this image whenever you're setting up all of your operations and where you want to send the job out from. Me personally, I go with a 0 Z point at the top of the material, and I put my origin, my project origin, at the center of the material. So I'll go center here for my project origin and go next. And now it's going to start to ask you about your clearance heights. You have multiple clearance heights. You need to know what your safe clearance height is, as far as this is the first one. Whenever you've sent that router out and moved it into position, you're going to have your material, if you're using clamps, clamping down on the top of your material. If you use tape and CNC method, or CNC, tape and super glue, you're not going to have anything above the surface of the material, nothing to worry about. But when you need to have that machine lift that router spindle up and away, how high does it need to go above the surface material to safely clear out and not run your bit into any clamps or hold downs or anything that might obstruct the evacuation, clearing that out and moving rapidly out of the way. So that is your safe clearance height. And if this is 0, the top surface, then depending on what the shape of your clamps are, you would set your clearance height for that. Here it's defaulted, and I'm going to leave it at 20 millimeters. That's not quite an inch. It's about 3/4 of an inch, give or take, that it's going to lift above 0 point, up and move. I'm going to leave it at 20 and say next. Now you have your fast retraction. Your fast retraction height is the distance above the stock to lift the router bit when moving between features. To prevent collisions, only enable fast retraction if the inner area of the stock is free of clamps, fasteners, and other obstructions. So, what did that just talk about? What if you had a design, a really large design, and you had cutouts in the middle of it, and you had clamps on the corners, but you also had clamps that you were able to get positioned into the center area of the material? There are going to be occasions that you could have designs clamped down that way. And if that's the case, it's telling you do not use fast retraction, because fast retraction is going to lift the material high enough to get above the last carving. So if your Z-axis 0 point, let's get one that's not been carved on. If the 0 point up here was, or is 0, but then you engraved one pocket down to 2 millimeters deep, then the next pocket you did at another 2 millimeters, 4 total. So you're 4 total down. If you're in that second pocket, moving from one feature to the next, then you're setting your retraction point here. How high does it need to move up to clear the first pocket? If you're using internal clamps, if the piece has a clamp in the inside, do not use this. It needs to go above that clamp, so it needs to go to that first setting you set. Understand? If there's any possibility of a collision within the work area, do not use fast retraction. But since we have no internal clamps, you can see here that you've cut down, and now it's cut down twice. It doesn't have to go all the way up above that initial 20 millimeters. It just needs to go high enough above the 0 surface, which is here. It's 5 millimeters. So it's going to go 5 millimeters above 0 and move to the next one. If it was the second project, it'd go down and go up above 5 millimeters above the 0 point. It's not going to clear your clamps. Essentially, that's what it is. That's the long and short of it. Fast retraction will not clear your clamps. So if you have internal clamps in the middle of the work area, which you're not going to have on the Cubico, but if you're using a large CNC, sometimes and most likely there will be chances you're going to have internal clamps. Don't use fast retraction with internal clamps. I don't have them, so I'll use it and say go 5 millimeters above the 0 Z point and say next. Now, this is the pocket lift, and this is what I started talking about by mistake. The pocket lift is the distance between one operation and the next. Project lift height is the distance to lift the router when traveling within the current pocket or feature. So if you were having multiple passes within the same project, the same pocket, as you see here, the same pocket, and you're in multiple passes, each time that it did complete one, there's one and it cuts over, this drops down to a new 0 point. And each time it's going to pick up and move, it's asking you how high should it move between the pocket it just created. So there it lifted up 5 mil, create another one, lift up 5 mil. So I'm going to leave this as is. Now I have created my product, my material is in MillMage and ready to start designing on. Now to see what that looks like in the advanced setup, if we go back to File and go to Project Setup, go to Advanced Setup, you can see all of that information in one big screen and make all the inputs and or changes you need to go through without having those visual representations. So if I say, oh, you know what, this is not 20 mil thick, it's actually only 18. Okay. Now it's set up. And I'm ready to start creating my designs and set up my operations. But designs and operations will be in the next video with MillMage. There is a lot to learn and a lot to cover, and it'd be nearly impossible to try and cram too much into a single video without people just... So, we're not going to do that. So this was project setup in MillMage. What to look for, and in fact, just real quick, I said that you could create a checklist. Let's go back over here. You have the ability to create checklist in MillMage and in LightBurn. This is something a lot of people have no idea even exists. But if you go up to your wrench and screwdriver, and on this is MillMage, here in your basic settings, if you come right down here at the bottom, there's this enable job checklist. You can turn that on and then come right over here to edit, and then you can create your checklist, whatever you want it to be. So here I have set project dimensions, set origins, create operations, select correct end mill, set 0 point for z-axis, job or frame job, and start. And so I got that and say okay. And now if I had a job in here in MillMage and I came over here and ran start, I hit the start button, before the job starts, that checklist is going to pop up and give me the opportunity to go down and look. Did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? Now this doesn't work maybe as well as a physical checklist for some. Some folks might benefit from having an actual clipboard with checklist on it that they can have sitting physically beside their CNC to just check everything off before they do the job. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's going to ensure you don't forget anything. But having a checklist, either like this, that prompts you to review your steps to make sure you didn't omit anything, is great. It's strongly encouraged to prevent you from breaking a bit, ruin some material, or just simply wasting time. There's another thing you can do, and I think we may see some changes in MillMage, possibly. You can also have, you've got the checklist that will populate whenever you are, right before you send the job. When you hit start, that checklist will pop up. There's also a notes field, but not in MillMage, not right now. I anticipate it and potentially have it work, and notes work differently. So let's jump over here, and I'm going to switch over to LightBurn real quick and show you the notes. The checklist is exactly the same. So if I go back over here and we switch over to LightBurn, this is my job that's running. If I come up here to File, Show Notes, I don't have any notes for this particular file, but if I did, you know, I'd have to save all my notes and do whatever, and save notes and save notes and save notes and say okay. Now I could come over here to turn this on, show on file open, and say okay. And if I saved this And then the next time I opened it up, before it will populate the screen with my design, but it will automatically open the notes and shows me these. Well, you can leave your notes open. No, you can't leave. I thought you could leave your notes open. And I read this online, so you know it's got to be true. I did read online that MillMage would have the ability to have that notes field open. It doesn't even exist in MillMage right now. So whether that comes to fruition and whether you can leave it open, we'll see. It's yet to be determined. But that would be nice if this wasn't your first time making this job and you've learned, oh yeah, I need to do this, or oh yeah, I need to do that. You make notes and you put it in there and you put it in a file. And if it's 2 months later before you open this file up again, boom, your notes pop up. And say, oh yeah, I need to remember to do that. And then you put your notes over there to the file or to the side. What would be really cool is if you could actually dock the notes. Like here, if I was to take this menu and just dock it right in here with these, kind of like you do with the cuts. Like you got to cancel it. You can't do anything else. So you turn that off. Let's get rid of all this. Say okay, that's gone. But how you can dock these, it would be nice if there was a notes option that we could have open down here. And then that way those notes, that note menu would be right there for this file. If we go back to MillMage and we go to File, oh, wait a minute. I just looked for that 30 seconds ago before going live, and I did not see that. But it's there. Let's see if it operates differently. Good gravy. Alright, so show notes. So there are my notes. Done, 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 done. And let's just say okay. And then if I go back to show notes again, there's my notes. Can I leave my notes open and work? No. No, cannot. So, notes is there, and you can add notes to a file if you have a predetermined set of bits that you need to make for this, or make sure you have anything that you would want to make a note of before starting a project with a pre-existing file. Put it in there and save it and tell it to open when you open that up, and that'll populate as soon as you open up that file. And now you'll see your notes, but we can't keep them open. That's something that I'm going to suggest that we make available so that it's open. Once you open it, you can have that open and still access everything else in MillMage and LightBurn. It's more crucial, I think, with having those notes open in MillMage more so than in LightBurn. But I think that would be a huge plus. What do y'all think? Tell me what you think about that idea in the comments. And if enough of you think, yeah, that's a pretty good idea, we'll get that ran up the flagpole and see if gets any attention there at LightBurn and MillMage. So you can set up a checklist, you can create notes. I've showed you how to set up your project, your material information within MillMage. Now you're ready to start designing, and we'll do that in the next video. But the designing part for right now within MillMage, it's not really that different than LightBurn. In fact, if you have LightBurn artwork, LightBurn art libraries, all of that will work within MillMage. So if you've got some really cool graphics that you like, or you got some projects that you've done as engravings, it's real simple to convert those to CNC carvings. So that'll be in the next topic we talk about here on Hobo with Wood Chips and our adventures in CNC. So guys, I hope you found this a little informative. There's a lot to learn. We will chip away at this. Get it? Chip away at this a little at a time, and hopefully we will all begin to have a better understanding of MillMage and CNCs. I'm Steve, Hobo with Wood Chips, and I'll see you in the next video.